What's next for the Cash Kid podcast? Hey Cash Kids! First off, a huge thank you for joining us on this podcast and helping us grow this audience. In just the first season of the Cash Kid podcast, we've watched this audience grow daily. It's got friends and family I know talking about their finances more and asking questions to make better financial decisions. I'm learning along with you and so glad you are here with us on this journey. This episode will mark the end of the first season of the Cash Kid podcast. But no worries, a new season will start up in just 2 to 3 weeks. Where are we headed? That and more of my thoughts on this podcast and its future coming up. The Cash Kid podcast is underway. So, you got some cash, maybe from an allowance, or that money your grandma gave you for your 7th birthday.
Here you go, sweetie.
Woohoo! Thanks, Grandma! Whatever it is, what are you gonna do with it? Spend it, hide it away, or maybe invest it? Let's start learning how to make that money grow. Time to learn how to be a cash kid. First, let's rewind and talk about how this podcast even got started. So, I was given an assignment in school to create a passion project. Many of my classmates were doing fundraisers or creating websites to share knowledge about a nonprofit or a health issue. But I knew what my passion was, the stock market and investing. So, I wanted to create a podcast. My teacher said I would be the first to create a podcast from this project. I came home and told my mom, and in full disclosure, I knew I had the materials to create a podcast. You see, my mom is a full-time voiceover talent, and we have a sound studio in our home. When I told her what I wanted to do, she said great. But in her mind, I think she was panicking a little.
I wouldn't say I was panicking. I just saw myself losing a lot more sleep.
Okay, well, we set out to create 4 episodes, and if you go back and review the first 4, you see I started out first talking about the stock market because, well, that was what I was passionate about. We got great feedback, and teachers and friends and family encouraged me to continue it. So, we met with a podcast producer to get some guidance, and we've been growing the podcast ever since. We have so many plans and topics we feel we can cover, from financial literacy terms to what jobs can kids do to make money, how to start your first job, scholarships, and of course, how to start investing early. It is my goal that we can help my generation, Gen Alpha, to be the smartest financial generation ever. I mean, why not? Think of how many problems that could solve. But I've also learned from adults talking to me about the podcast that they are finding the information useful as well. I'm grateful for all listeners, young and young at heart. So if you haven't yet, please go back and start from episode 1 and listen in. The first season, we touched on a little bit of everything, from the stock market to budgeting to investment advice, the type of spender or saver you are, and interviewed 3 fellow cash kids on how they're making money. In season 2, we plan to start breaking it down, and we feel the best way is to focus on financial terms that, frankly, many adults don't even know or understand. As we move into season 2, though, I wanted to communicate ways to be engaged and never miss out. First, if you haven't already, visit us at cashkidpodcast.com. All episodes are posted there. You can even read the transcripts for each episode, find contact details for our guests, and be sure to sign up for our mailing list for alerts when new episodes are released. Also, creating a podcast isn't free. So if you'd like to support the growth of my podcast, there is an option on my website to buy me a coffee. These funds will help us continue to grow the show and are most appreciated. And probably most important, you can leave a review or feedback right on our website. Plus, follow the Cash Kid podcast on Instagram. We post new content weekly to know what's going on. The same for YouTube. Actually, we have some teachers already using the YouTube videos of each episode to play for their students. This is so exciting to hear. And most importantly, listen in each week. The Cash Kid Podcast is on all major podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. And whatever platform you choose, please take 3 seconds after listening and rate the podcast. This helps boost our ratings and reach a much larger audience. So just to recap, be sure to go to the website cashkidpodcast.com. Tell your family and friends. Listen in to past episodes. Go to my donation link on my website and buy me a coffee to help fund this podcast. Give feedback by emailing me through my website and rate this podcast. Well, that wraps up on season 1. Just remember, anyone can be a Cash Kid. You just have to learn how to become one. Cash Kid, out.
The information presented represents the views and opinions of the guest. This podcast does not intend to provide personal investment advice. This content has been made for informational and educational purposes only. To make a full and informed investment decision, we advise you to speak with a financial advisor. And for kids, definitely your parents first before investing.